Notre Dame fans, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. It is Wednesday night. Wednesday night, Ryan, means it's time to get into the film room, man.
Yes, sir.
And that is what we are going to do tonight. And this is like the diehard night, right? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, we're going to dive into some film about. We're going to kind of wrap up the Notre Dame commits, right? We're going to get into tonight. We're going to talk about Cedric Irvin Jr. We're going to watch his film. We're then going to dive into some film of Cooper Flanagan. I'm going to be real with y'all from the beginning. There's not a lot of good film on either one of these two guys. There's not a lot of good film for two reasons. Number one is there's just not a lot of good highlight film, right? So like there's actually some good film online of Sedrick Irvin if you want to watch a game. But game film is not conducive to this kind of show. It's more of if you want to watch it, just type in Gulliver Prep Football 2021. And there's some game film on there. There's a good game against Manatee on there. Manatee's a good program in the state of Florida. And he had a really grinded out game, 103 yards, 21 carries, and a long of 13 yards. Mm-hmm. And it's a game where it's not a game where he's ripping off a bunch of 50-yard runs. You see Cedric Irvin, making plays and those kind of things. So there's some film there. Cooper Flanagan is a guy they just don't throw the ball to a whole lot. So, De La Salle is going to do what De La Salle does, right? And doesn't matter who they have at tight end, they're going to keep doing what they do, right? And so it's not going to be the most exciting film ever. This also happens to be the two lowest ranked guys in the recruiting class so far, Ryan, which to me speaks volumes about how good this recruiting class is because these are two four-star kids that, are ranked in the top 250 by multiple people. Cooper Flanagan's ranked in the top 100 by somebody. So it just shows when this is your, bottom. Now, again, it's only 8 commits, right? It's not like they got 25 commits and these are the two lowest ranked guys. That would be the greatest class in the history of recruiting. But, of the start so far, these are the two lowest ranked guys. And on my board, I don't know about yours. I'm pretty sure Cedric Irvin's in that bottom 2 for you, I believe. Is Flanagan also in that kind of that bottom 2? And again, 4-star kids on my board, top 250 kids on my board, and these are the last 2 in the class, which, again, just shows how good this class is so far. So these are 2 quality football players, Ryan.
Now, it does speak volumes, honestly, because we're talking about the other 6 that we've already evaluated from the Peyton Bowens of the world, the Keon Keeleys, the Brendan Vernons. Unfortunately, for a lot of Notre Dame fans, they're in panic mode a little bit because that's the only 2 offensive recruits, and we're talking about them as the 2 lowest of the 8, which is, I understand it instills panic, but when you really just take a look at it in a vacuum, just take yourself out of the equation for a second, offense versus defense. The fact that we're talking about a top 250 kids, and again, you said Cooper Flanagan by one of the recruiting platforms is a top 100 player, and those are that's the lowest ranked right now. Again, speaks volumes to the job that Marcus Freeman and the rest of the staff has done so far on the recruiting trail.
He is ranked 99 by 247 Sports. Cedric Irvin's highest ranking is 226, which means the lowest ranking for a Notre Dame kid, again, when you look at their highest ranking, is Cedric Irvin at 226. Every other recruit in the class, and I'm trying to think through this, you've got Irvin and Flanagan, we talked about, but Keeley and Vernon are both top 100 guys by at least one service. Drake Bowen's a top 100. No, there's only 2. Adon Schuler and Cedric Irvin are the only 2 players in this class that aren't ranked in the top 100 by at least one recruiting service.
Right.
Which again shows just the high impact. And then more importantly, they've got film to match, which is more important than a recruiting ranking is, okay, but does the game match the recruiting ranking? Right. Or is this a kid that went to some camp and did well and they're ranking him because of that? So these are good football players. Right. And it's a good foundation. Now, the key on the offensive staff is, okay. And we view them this way, not because of the recruiting rankings, but just we've graded the film out and this is what we see. Right. And so to me, this is a good starting point for the offense. Now the key is building on it, adding guys that are even better. That's the key. And that's what we're going to dive into, Ryan. So let's start off with Cedric Irvin because he's a very interesting player. Obviously, for me personally, I don't know how you feel about this, Ryan. This is a bit of a juggling act for me. And trying to figure out that was a little crazy, that color there. This is a bit of a juggling act for me. I don't know why it's showing up like that. It's not that color on my screen, so I don't know what's going on. Is that showing up as like pink and
no? It's blue.
It's showing up as normal. Okay, so then it's just mine. It looks pink and green on my screen, so I don't know what's going on.
You're good.
All right, if it's looking good on yours, then that's great, right?
Yep.
So when I wanted, like, I feel like the double-edged sword, or the difficult part for me is I want to talk about him as his own man, but I feel like because of the way he plays and his body type, it's almost like we're then doing a disservice to people if we don't mention the fact that he's Sedrick Irvin's son, because there are some similarities between how they look and how they play. Obviously, his dad is Sedrick Irvin Jr., who was a running back in Michigan State. Notre Dame fans who were around in the Bob Davie and Ty Willingham era, he was kind of around during that time, will probably remember Sedrick Irvin Sr., and he was a physical, tough, smart back, Ryan.
Yep. 235 pounds. Yep. Downhill plunge.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I was actually wondering this the other day, Brian. I would love to know how much Sedrick Irvin Sr. weighed going into college, right? Because we know he was 235 during the latter stages of his Michigan State career when he was at his best. But I would love to know if he was a similar size to Junior, because that would just kind of from a projection perspective. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I didn't know he was that big, to be completely honest with you. I didn't realize he was that big there. Yeah, but I mean, he was a physical back. I'm going to see if I can somehow find it. While you're talking about him, I'll see if I can find it. Cool. But the thing about his son is, obviously, when you look at what Sedrick Irvin was as a player, Cedric Irvin Jr. is not there yet from a strength standpoint.
Sure.
But here's the thing that I like about him. And this is, and we'll kind of dive into his strengths as you kind of look at his recruiting ranking. Top 300 caliber kid on 3 sports. I don't even think they've ranked him at this point in time. I don't even think there's even a 3-star ranking for him. But when you look at when you look at Cedric, to me, the first thing that stands out is the build, the frame. And that's why I feel like we are doing a disservice if we're not talking about his dad, right? And because what I like is I like 2 things I like about running backs that I always look for. Number 1, I like running backs that are built low to the ground. I feel like low leverage running backs, it's good because it's harder to go low on a guy that's 5'9", right? I mean, if you're a 6'3" linebacker and that running back is 5'9" and he's running with lower pad level, chances are, he's going to win that low man battle, right?
Right.
And guys with the lower frames tend to end up developing thicker legs. And that's kind of where I view Sedrick Irvin. He's got a very low build. He's got a developing frame. He's a pretty cut kid. If you look at him, he's got a very athletic body. His lower body is not super. He's not big, right? His lower body's not big, but you can see the frame there that it's like this kid's going to get into a college weight room and he's going to be 205, 210 before it's all said and done. Is the way I see it. And it's all going to be in the thighs and the butt, right? Because that's what because he's not only short, and what I mean by low build, he's got short legs. Yeah. Like if you look at him, he's got a really long torso and short legs, which means when he gets running, he's going to be even lower. And it reminds me, a lot of his dad, right? And he's more Emmitt Smith than Barry Sanders in body type. Because you remember, Barry Sanders was short, but he had kind of long galloping legs. Yeah. Emmitt was short and had shorter legs, and he just could, kind of have those really short power steps. When you talk body frame, body type, and that's what I see from Cedric, is a guy that's got that real low, that really short legs and that low body type that I like in running backs personally.
Well, and you talk about why that matters, right? Like when I think of the 2 different body types that you're trying to illustrate a little bit, right? We're talking about the guys that have shorter legs comparative to a high cut kid that might be someone. Think about an Eric Dickerson for the people out there. Think of an Adrian Peterson,
Josh Adams, if you're looking for Notre Dame references.
if you're looking for Notre Dame comp, for sure, that would be a Josh Adams with that high cut frame. And it's tough for those guys to play so low at times, right? They look like they're galloping, and it gives them, it just kind of gives defenders a lot more to tackle sometimes, right? And those guys are usually a little sleeker, maybe have longer legs, so they might be able to, kind of hit the second gear a little quicker. But I also do like the shorter, stockier frame potential. And I actually wrote down when I was watching him, I thought 210 would be perfect for him because I think that he can develop that and also not lose any of the athleticism that he has. And then you have still that ability to have a low center of gravity and contact balance. I think that people always talk about contact balance. They throw that out. Well, for me, I always think of a pinball, right? Like that short, stocky DeAndre Swift, Kyron Williams, like that type of body type, right? Those guys are usually the ones that are the guys that just don't seem to go down on first effort. And that's what I think of when I think of Sedrick Irvin Jr. is I think of effort as a runner. I think of the ability to maintain that balance, to defeat contact, to navigate chaos a little bit.
You know, I think too is when you're a bigger guy and you're trying to, and you get into traffic, you have to make a concerted effort to dip, like get low and rip, where a shorter back already has that frame where he just kind of just powers through. Natural. And I think that kind of leads into the point too. He's got really quick feet and he's got really good balance, really like his balance. And that's important for a running back. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to make quick moves, allows you to make a move. And then once you plant, you're right back in the running phase, right? You ever see like a guy give a stiff arm and kind of leap and almost hurdle. And then as soon as he hits the ground, he's right back to running. As opposed to a guy that may do that and then he kind of stumbles and has to gather himself for a couple steps. You know, that also allows you to be really good after contact. You know, guys with good balance can get hit and kind of stay up and keep running. And I think those are things that you see from Sedrick. You especially see that on some of the game film I've seen because, I mean, the thing you'll see on film is he, you know, like I said, he's a one-cut runner with little wasted motion. He kind of has to be. Because when I watch film of him, like dudes are getting on him pretty quick. You know, he's got to make decisions and go. And I like that. I like the quick feet. I like the balance. That fits what Notre Dame does, in my opinion. That inside zone, outside zone, where he's got to stretch. And that you kind of go down to, you know, 0.4, Ryan, as you put these three together, they kind of all fit together. They build on each other. When you talk about that patience and decisiveness, what you want to have, a back's got to be able to plant and go. Right. But you don't want him to just plant and go at the snap because he's got to let the hole develop and there's timing. You got to make your read. Am I cutting back? Am I bouncing it? Am I going right in? You know, do I hold the ball, stay on my track until the guy makes a decision? Then I got to cut and go. You got to combine that patience with decisiveness. And I see that from Sedrick. And I think those are the things to me those are the things that graded him out as a 4-star because he's not an elite athlete. He's not a burner. He's not a guy that, at least on the film we've seen, displays great speed. It's good, but not great speed. And even though we talk about he's got good pass game potential, he only caught 12 passes last year for 170 yards. So he has potential there, but they don't throw him the ball a lot. It's those traits that you say, this guy's got some natural feel for the game that makes me think he could end up being an even better player than maybe his projection would be right now or his production will be right now. That's kind of how I see those when you look at the strengths of Sedrick Irvin, right?
Yeah, I love the patience, and I think that would probably be my biggest one outside. Well, actually, maybe even more than just the low center of gravity balance that he has, because I really do think that it's so important when we're talking about it, specifically running inside zone, right? Like we're talking about, like if it's a zone left, for instance, a lot of people think like, oh, it's going to hit left, right? But that patience, because a lot of times zone hits backside, right? Like backside A to B. That's where inside zone hits. And then when you're an outside zone runner, I mean, in theory, you want to hit the corner, right? Like you want to go off tackle in a perfect world. But a lot of times you see where, you know, defenses aren't dumb, right? Like they're going to overplay a little bit. And then that's where that cutback comes in. And I think that really demonstrates, when I think of him, I just think that he understands. And some people think navigating space is a trait where you have to be this special athlete. No, that's where the vision and that's just where the awareness of being able to work in space. You kind of just see things develop in front of you. Right. And I think that that's what Sedrick does best, in my opinion. Right. I think that's his best trait is that I think he has an innate sense of how things are developing around him.
Which is how a guy like Terrell Davis can go from, you know, back up in college to one of the best 3-year stretches in the history of the NFL. Yep. He was not the biggest. He was 205, 210 when he played for Denver. He was not a home run hitter when you look at him from a 40-time standpoint. You know, he was not a guy that went to the combine and blew up or had a pro day at Georgia and blew up. You know, he was a guy that transferred from Long Beach State. You know, and he was back up to Garrison Hurst, right? Used him at fullback at times. But that he had those other intangibles that are so important for a running back, and that's how you can see a guy like Trent Richardson on the flip side, who's built like a tank, ran, I believe, wasn't he a 4.4 guy at the combine?
So,
But
he was definitely a 4.4 kid when he tested. Yeah, he was a freak. Yeah,
but he was not a very good running back because he didn't have that feel for the game. He was great vision at Bama because they just would open these big holes for him.
Yeah,
and he was a 5-star in high school because he was the biggest, strongest, baddest dude on around. Well, then you get to the NFL and everybody's a big, bad, athletic dude. And it's about who's got the IQ, because that's one thing I think is often lost when you look at like great college players and great NFL players. A lot of them are not just great athletes; they're also really smart football players, right?
For sure. Yep.
And you look at a guy like Isaiah Simmons, for example, right? One of the freakiest athletes we've seen. I mean, they would use him all over the field. You can't do that if the guy's not a smart football player, right? And running backs too. Like, you got to be smart. You got to know, like, I'm watching this linebacker and I've studied his film and I know when he turns his hips to this or his shoulders to this degree, I know he's playing over top and I know I got the cutback. So I'm going to set him up. And I mean, it's just that feel for the game that the good ones have. And some guys that are elite athletes don't have that. And then there's some guys who aren't elite athletes who end up being like Tony Jones Jr. Dude averaged almost 6 yards a carry in his 1 year as a starter lineup. And he ran a 4.7 because he had a really good feel for the game. And
he's hanging around in the NFL too.
He can stay healthy. He'd be doing a lot more if he could just stay healthy for the Saints. But and that's what I see from Cedric. He's that kind of guy, Ryan. And I point to this Manatee game because this is a perfect example of how I see Cedric Irvin. 21 carries, 103 yards. That's about 4.9 yards a carry. He had a long of 13 yards. And I watched the game and I'm thinking, it was a solid game. He did some good things, ran tough, smart kid. I was like, but I don't think the production was there. Then I went and looked at the box score and I saw that he had 21 carries for 103 yards and a touchdown. You know what I mean? Like, he's just one of those guys that just does the job. But when you put a guy like that behind a great offensive line, then you start seeing more production. And and that's how you see, like, with the Torian Folstons before his injury set, it's why you see a Tony Jones Jr. go for 4.9, those type of things. And so when you have guys like that, they're going to be productive. Now, they may not be take over a game, go dominate Bama guys. He's not that, right? But they're guys that if you put a good team around him, he can help you. And then the last thing, I think the pass game potential is there as a pass catcher. There's some good film of him in pass pro in high school, and he's like most high school backs. It's a process, right?
Sure.
But the potential is there, and that's another thing I like about those low build guys, because you're going to try to come at the quarterback and he's going to run right through your kneecaps because that's how he's built. So, and he's a lot like Kyron Williams in that regard. Now he's not as, like, the frame is similar to where Kyron was in high school. Completely different types of players, though. I'm only comparing the build to Kyron because Kyron was a super shifty guy. Cedric is not that. Cedric's a one cut go kind of guy.
Right.
But there's some good tools to work with here for him.
Yeah.
Ryan.
Yeah, and I think that the pass game stuff is and this goes from if you're evaluating high school players, it goes if you're evaluating college players, NFL players, right? There's a lot of guys that come to the NFL right now that they don't have the pass game profile, right? They didn't catch a ton of passes. They weren't asked to do a ton in pass protection, but it's just because that's just how the offense dictated that they play, right? Like, they just weren't given the opportunity. So when you're evaluating that type of stuff, I want to see, is the kid fluid enough to run some routes potentially? Does he have soft hands? Does he fight the football? Like, those are the things that you see. And Cedric has that, in my opinion. Like, he has comfort as a receiver. It just hasn't been asked of him a ton in the situation. Now, like you said, he's going to be at a different school next year. So let's see what the usage looks like. It might look a little different next year.
And that was part of the reason he left, was because he went, he had 137 carries last year for Gulliver Prep. And there was some questions about, okay, is he really being used properly? I think that was and when you watch the film, it's kind of like, yeah, okay, I get it. I have those same questions. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't know if he is being used properly. And those are the things as a young man and as a parent that you kind of have to look at and say, okay, it's not all about football, but it's like if your son or daughter was an excellent math student and the high school they went to had a bad math program, wouldn't you consider moving your child to a program where you had a better math program that would better, build around their talent, because you think they've got some opportunities to go to college and turn this into a career, that kind of thing? It's no different from football, in my opinion. and so that's the decision that him and the family are making, and I think it's a good one. And that's why Ryan and I have talked about this. We both kind of have we're going to give you our evaluation of where he is now, but of all the players in the class, he's the one guy that I'm most going to try to stay open-minded about as a senior, because I do think there were some O-line issues and some usage issues that I think make it like, I don't know if I really know everything I need to know about Cedric Irvin at this point in time.
Yeah, and he's only a high school junior, right, going into his senior year. So just physically, he's also going to develop. I think it was you, Brian, that said, right, like you liked Jadarian Price as a junior, right? But then his senior year, it was like different, dude, man. Like it just that gear came, right? Because these kids are still developing. Let's remember.
Well, and what I didn't know too is Jadarian was injured as a junior, which we didn't know about because he wasn't out there making excuses for it, which is another reason I love that kid. Yeah. But we didn't fight. And actually, Jadarian never told us that. His coach, Brian Smith, went out there for one of his games this year, and he was talking to his coach, and he's like, "Yeah, what a lot of people don't know is he was banged up all year last year." And I'm like, he put up the production he had last year against the talent he plays against as a banged up kid. Okay, let me see what he's going to do this year. And I think he had like 300 yards in the game that Brian went to. So I mean, did pretty well. So there's always that open mindedness, but I think, like with Keon Keeley and Peyton Bowen, like we know they're going to improve as players, but like you already kind of know who they are. With Cedric, it's more like I really don't know if I have a great feel for Cedric at this point in time. Before we dive into the film, there was a question about this that I thought was really good. DMND 13 says, with the 3 services that have him ranked, they're actually pretty close in ranking, unlike some of the other guys we've seen. And we'll see that with Cooper Flanagan as well, that there's a pretty big gap between the rankings. Do you two have him in the same ballpark, top 225 to top 250? I do. I think it's a very fair ranking. I mean, I think anywhere from 225 to 275 is kind of the sweet spot for me with where Cedric is based on what we know about him right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would be roughly in the same ballpark just about. And I think that it does speak volumes that, again, the 3 services that we highlighted were relatively in the same ballpark. So people have a similar opinion, I think, right now, right? Like there's not a huge variance. It's not like one service has them top 100, another service has them 200. Like there's not that huge variance. Right. I think it says that most people see him similarly, but again, we want to see him with a higher volume next year to see, what the overall kind of outlook is on him. Because I just think that it's a limited sample size a little bit.
Because supposedly Columbus is going to feature him more. Is part of the deal. So we'll see how that goes. So let's dive into some film here, Ryan. Does that film look good to you? Is it coming up normal?
Looks good.
This is really jacked up for me. I'm gonna have to take a screenshot of this so you can have an idea of what I'm looking at. I have to show it to you after the show. So let's dive into the film here, folks. And this is actually, I believe, his spring game this past spring. So like I said, there's not a lot of great film of Cedric. Here he is at quarterback, just so we're clear, running a little bit of a wildcat quarterback. I think that's with Jalen Brown. But you'll see the quick feet. You see the cutback. That's good vision right there. That's that vision we talk about, Ryan. This is is this power read or outside zone? Yeah, this is power read. So you can know it's power read because you see the backside guard pulling right here. So he's pulling around, so you know it's power read. Okay, which basically what that means is they're running a jet sweep or a sweep play with the running back. Right. And so if the end crashes, then he's going to hand that thing off and they're going to get outside. As you can see, the end takes the jet, right? Takes the sweep action. So you keep it, you get up inside, stays vertical on his track, and then cuts it back. So that's the good vision that we talk about.
And it's really nice vision because that thing is not supposed to hit there, right? Like it's supposed to hit front side off of that read.
Power is a front side play. Correct.
Yep.
Correct. Yep. He's supposed to be getting. Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, no, I was just going to say somebody, I think 54 is the offensive lineman that got beat across his face a little bit, right? There's a little bit of leakage there. So he has an excellent vision to see that, hey, my track needs to change now.
Yeah, 54 gets beat inside. That's your thing, that's your job. You are supposed to not give up that. You're the cutoff. You're the cutback guy, right? And he not only gets beat inside, but he gets pushed back a little bit. So he's got to cut behind that guy. A power read is basically supposed to see this lead blocker here. This is an A gap out run normally, one of the 2 A gaps out type of run. But this is supposed to be a block, like the call side entry point. So yes, that's a good observation, Ryan. That's not supposed to be it's not a zone play. Where if they're running inside zone right, if zone goes the way you want it to, it cuts back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, zone gives you options. Power, you're supposed to know exactly where it's supposed to hit.
Mm-hmm. Very calm.
Mm-hmm.
Acts like he's been there before because he has. It's a little counter action. And again, you'll see a lot of this on his highlight tape where he's kind of getting hit in the backfield and having to make it. I'll tell you what, his high school film looked a lot. Maybe that's why I thought of Kyron. His high school film looked a lot like what Kyron went through this year, where you're having to make dudes miss in the backfield.
And honestly, that helps a guy with vision. I mean, I thought Kyron took a big step forward with patience and vision this year because he had to. He was forced to.
Right. This counter is another play. It's a between the tackles run, right? That's forced to bounce because of you can see he's going downhill and he's forced to quickly bounce it outside because of the penetration.
Yep. And
good recognition by his lineman to read that block as well and get outside. That receiver does a not lineman, the receiver right there that does a would that be a receiver
he's
tight end.
He's like a wing, number 4.
Right. Good recognition of where that thing's going and getting outside.
Nice block downfield too.
Yep. And this is that. So like he doesn't have like this is what I'm talking about. Like look how smooth and efficient this dip and rip is. Like a big guy's kind of got to really lower it, but at the end of this run, he just kind of dip and rip real fast and just trucks this dude. And the fact that he doesn't go down right away speaks to the strength, but also that balance that I'm talking about.
Yep.
Right? A guy that lacks balance and really flexible ankles is going to run over that guy and then go right on top of him.
Yep. Love guys that finish runs. Love it.
Mm-hmm. That's that toughness where you're like, because you can see like right now in this film, his thighs aren't like super big.
No.
Right. I mean, but they're gonna fill out, right? You can see this, like the calves are they're defined, but they're not quite, really super big. Those things are gonna change as he gets out. I love this patience here.
Mm-hmm.
He's getting behind that block. What he's doing here, the reason he's not just running, if he just takes off to the corner right now, his receiver is blocking inside of this cornerback. So like right there, if he just sprints to the outside, this DB has the angle to just get off that block and go tackle him, right? Mm-hmm. So he's patiently letting that block develop to where eventually he gets on that guy and bounces off. So he's now able to maximize the yardage. So even though he gets outside, he allows that block to stay engaged longer because he's running right at the block, right? Yeah. And that's a smart, savvy play. And then that also, if that DB plays this pretty, relatively well too. If the DB comes off too quickly at this point, like right now, if the DB comes off and just goes outside, Cedric's cutting right in between 4 and 5 for a touchdown, right? Mm-hmm. So this is really well done by both guys, but Cedric's able to maximize this run because he stays patient and he sees that's that instinct thing. He sees the color on the outside because that's one of the things I would teach my backs when Ryan is like, you see color, you cut, right? Like wherever you see color, you cut away from it. I mean, color means it's the opposite of, the opposite color of the team that you're playing.
Right.
Get the ball. This is the one. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. Get the ball in your outside arm.
Yep.
I expect the kid of an NFL back to know that.
Yep. Get it outside arm just in case, right?
Because right now, if these guys come and tackle him, he doesn't have an inside arm free for a stiff arm.
Nope.
Right?
So you see a little bit of juice, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe not the fastest runner, but he has plus speed. It's good speed.
And here's the thing. Watch when he catches the ball and squares up. Mm-hmm. He is at full speed right now.
Yep.
Like right now, he's at full speed.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me a lot of Torian Folson in some ways with that body type, and he's not being a burner. And I love it. He catches it. Both of these catches, he does the same thing. He catches the ball and immediately squares up. Like that little turn right there is a real efficient way of catch the ball, square up, get your eyes downfield, and go make a play. Get the ball in your outside arm.
Yeah, he's definitely a no nonsense type of kid, right? Mm-hmm. Like he wants to get north and south. There's no dancing to this young man. Mm-hmm. He wants to get vertical in a hurry.
Yep. He understands the importance of getting every yard you can. Mm-hmm. Maximize the yardage opportunities that are there for you on a play. That's a nice little. This will say this isn't super shifty, but this is a nice one cut. But what makes this play is he sees right now. He sees this guy is on him.
Yep.
So you're like, okay, I need to press him outside, because if I make a cut now, it lets the help get out there. So he presses outside. Okay, make the catch, press outside, and once that guy commits, you cut inside and maximize your yards. These are those high IQ plays that I really like that he just does naturally. And you can see really efficient. He does. It's not super choppy. Just cut and vertical. Bam. 1, 2. I'm vertical. That's that balance and that agility that the quick feet that I really like. He's not Reggie Bush type of jukiness or even Kyron Williams. He's a very efficient running back.
Yep. Again, just enough.
There.
Just enough. You know, he understands how to set guys up. He understands how to set them up here.
He reads his block really well.
I was gonna say again, he presses outside, just kind of like how you illustrate a little bit, gets the leverage there, and then is able to spin back for a couple extra yards.
And James Ingles, we're looking at Cedric Irvin Jr. He just got here and said, "Who are we watching?" So said there is some pass blocking to him. This isn't one of those ones that I would have put on a highlight tape. That's just me, you know. But he obviously thought that was good highlight tape. And then we're going to go to a game from, I think this was also in the spring. So there's just not a lot of good senior film. It's a bunch of clips. The only thing that I have, again, if you want to watch more film of him, go to YouTube and type in Gulliver Prep Football 2021. There's actually some full games. Normally, like TV games aren't great for you to watch, like receivers and DBs and stuff like that, because you can't see a lot of what they do. But they're great for like linemen, backs, and running backs, because you can see everything that they're doing. And so you'll get plenty of that. Okay, here's a little bit more. Just watch a little bit more film. I think this play we've already seen before. This was on the highlight. This is on the highlight tape. Yeah.
Someday, Brian, we're gonna have all 22 high school film.
I know that'd be phenomenal. It'd be making me such a happy man. Let's get back. Some of these, like I said, we've already seen. Yeah, we've already seen a lot of these. So, all right. So let's. We're gonna. That's about. I mean, that's like I said. That's about it. There's some nice individual plays that he put on film, but there's just not a ton of great film. Like I said, he had 137 yards, 137 carries the whole season.
Right.
And it's not an ideal situation. And as far as just having a plethora of film to watch them. But again, you see the stuff on there, Ryan. I mean, you see what we talked about in that film.
Yeah, and if I could speak also, obviously we're talking about him as a football player tonight, right? Speaking of Sedrick Irvin Jr., which you see the traits to be what I would consider a good all-around back. Like I see that kind of upside with him, but I would also say he exemplifies what I think of when I think of a Notre Dame fit, right? And that is, you know, every time I speak to him, he just continues to talk glowingly about Notre Dame. He's one of the guys that I would say in this class is really pushing for a lot of players. He's a guy that wants to build something special at Notre Dame. So he's a fit not only on the field as a football player, again, top 250 caliber player, which I think upside to improve in his senior year, but also a great kid as well. Just absolute great kid.
And look, the fact that his dad played against Notre Dame but is supportive of his son going to Notre Dame, you see that a lot with former players. Especially guys who maybe didn't have super long NFL careers, because they're like, hey, you know, that teammate of mine that played at Notre Dame, you know, he took the money he made and turned it into, you know what I mean? But they also understand that football's gone quickly, and you want to have opportunities. And I think that's something else. Cedric gets that. He understands that. Then the other thing is somebody asked a question. David Solomon asked a question. I'm going to answer, but go in a different direction of it a little bit. Sure. And he says, who has more upside, Price or Irvin Jr.? It's definitely Price for me. I think Jadarian Price has special upside. Yeah. But what I'd want to say about that, though, is that's one thing I do like about Sedrick Irvin is because they're a really nice complement. Where Cedric is a really efficient, you know, Torian Folston type, and Jadarian brings home run ability to the table. Yeah. Now, Jadarian is an every down back for me. Like, you know, I've said this about Chris Tyree. Chris Tyree to me is not a 20 carry guy. It's just he doesn't have the body, and that's not necessarily how you want to use him. I think Notre Dame needs to use him better. We're going to have some stuff on that in the offseason about how they're going to have to learn to use him better. But Jadarian has every down back ability, but he also can be part of a nice complementary backfield because he's a home run hitter too.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I like about it. So these two guys fit together, and that's always important in recruiting. It's not just about just getting the best backs you can. It's about finding guys that complement each other as well. Because some guys may be great at, short yardage, pass blocking, third down backs because they can block and catch out of the backfield, good screen backs, but maybe they're not a home run hitter or they're not a 20 carry guy. But you put those backfields together, especially in today's era of playing deeper looks. I think it is too. So James Ingles also said Sir Irvin reminds him of Darius Walker. Body type wise, body type wise, I would say they are very similar. I would say that the balance is the thing that stands out the most. Darius had great balance. I think Cedric has a little bit more juice than Darius had. Darius was really slow, but he was a heck of a college player. He was just really slow. I think Cedric has a little bit more burst. But with the thing about Darius, though, is Darius you knew who he was coming out of high school because he was so productive. That's the other thing to me that is a bit of I want to see how he does as a senior is we just haven't seen a ton of production from him because he just hasn't been used. He averaged barely 10 yards a carry. 10 carries a game as a junior. Yeah.
You were thinking about Jadarian Price.
I was. Yeah. 10 carries a game. And, I just want to see the usage a little bit this year. So opinion is still a little bit open on him.
Yeah. So
Ryan, let's dive into Cooper Flanagan now.
Let's do it.
Let's get into this fella. Speaking of complimentary players, let's get to his ranking first.
Yeah.
Let's get up to his ranking first. So here is his ranking profile. And like a lot of the kids at Notre Dame in this class, with the exception of Cedric Irvin, wide gap in how he's ranked. And Rivals has him as a 4-star, but not in their top 250. Based on how they rank him, I would imagine he's kind of close to being a top 300 guy, but not in the top 250 because ESPN does a top 300. 24/7 Sports does a top 247, which whatever. And then Rivals does a top 250. So they all kind of, change how many guys they include in their rankings. Right. So consensus 4-star player, but as you see, 247 Sports ranks him as a 4-star recruit. Not only that, but also a top 100 player. And the others have him much lower than that. So I always find these things fascinating how they can be so different, and he's the number 7 tight end in the country, according to 247 Sports. And that's the thing that, to me, speaks volumes about how this is a really good tight end class, much better than last year's tight end class, just from a depth that you can be the number 7 tight end and still be a top 100 player. Now, it also, I think, 247, has a few tight ends bumped up a little too high, but it's a really good tight end class. From a ranking standpoint, Ryan, I don't think I'd put Cooper that high. I would not. I don't know if I'd put him as low as 288.
Right.
But I have him as like a top 250 caliber guy, which is, the around where on 3 is, maybe a tad higher. That just, and part of that is, I'll be completely honest with you, is just because it's a lot like Sedrick Irvin. Can Cooper Flanagan run? I don't know. We don't get to see him turn loose a whole lot. There's some things because of, again, when you're a great program like De La Salle, there's some positives from it. You're playing in a great program. You're going to be well coached. You're going to understand the importance of having to go to class and do all those type of things. The negative is they're going to do what they do, whether it fits your skill set or not. You know what I mean? And so we don't see a lot of opportunities for Cooper. And I think that's part of the reason that Isaiah Foskey was a little underrated coming out. It's just because they weren't going to build around what Isaiah does. He was just a spoke in the wheel to what they do.
Cog in the machine.
Opinion. Yeah, which is fine. Look, you're De La Salle, you can do that. That's fine. Their job is to win football games, not, you want to develop players for the next level, but not at the expense of winning football games. And I would say De La Salle has that whole winning football games thing down pretty well. Right.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say this, Brian, I'm not very surprised that there's such a wide variance on this one, to be honest with you, because it's like, he led the team in receiving, De La Salle, last year, which obviously is a powerhouse program. Now they run the ball, right? They're an option offense, right? So they're not throwing the ball at all. So it makes it a little bit of a tough projection, right? Because even when he's running routes, as you all will see, it's not like he's running a variety of routes. Like it's like tight end pops, tight end seams. Like he's not running a variety of routes to see what type of route runner is he, how fast is he? Because you're not really seeing him work against man coverage. You're not seeing him navigate space. Like it's not something that is truly translatable. So I'm not surprised that some people look at him and say, though, like, hey, he is a really good player on a dynamic De La Salle program. He's got a frame. Like I could see where it could get, but then other people are going to be hesitant because you just don't see the well-roundedness of his game. Like you don't get to see some stuff about him. You know what I mean?
And I think that it also depends on how you value a tight end. True. I mean, Cooper, and we'll get into this. I mean, Cooper is a throwback tight end. He is a Brock Wright. He's more Brock Wright than he is even a Michael Mayer, or especially like a Tommy Tremble. You know, he is not a quote unquote modern tight end. Cooper's the kind of tight end that would have been just as good 20 years ago as he is today, right? He would have fit just as well. So, you know, some programs don't put value on a guy that's a traditional tight end. They're more in love with the flex guy and that kind of stuff. And, you know, kudos to 247 Sports for being willing to rank high several types of tight ends, because there's Deuce Robinson is ranked really high in that board, and Deuce Robinson could not be any further apart from Cooper Flanagan from a style of play standpoint, right?
Yeah.
So again, I don't know if I can go with 247 or 247 right now in the ranking, but you know, props to them for, you know, doing something different. And yeah, but I think the fact is he's a good football player. You know, consensus 4-star recruit. Everybody sees a guy that's just a good football player. Yeah. And that's what I like about him.
And I like that he has obviously a lot of experience blocking in this offense, right? Because there's a good baseline to being a productive player in college. And that gets you excited too, in my opinion, because I think that there are the raw tools, obviously. So you can project forward and say, like, man, like he has some development, obviously, in the passing game that can be there for him. And he's already a good baseline blocker. So I think that's just nice baseline for that development, I think.
Yeah. So let's go kind of what we like about Cooper Flanagan. I mean, Ryan, we've hit on it. The first thing that stands out is this is a big kid and a powerful kid for that age. For a junior in high school, this kid, and let's explain. Go ahead and explain what we mean by power. It's not just, I mean, just go ahead and explain what we mean when we talk about a kid that is powerful. It's not just he's 250 pounds bigger than everybody else and leans in him. It goes much deeper than that.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of layers to it, right? Like we're talking about body composition. Like when I talk about power, I want to see when he gets his hands inside, like let's say he's at the tight end and he's able to make contact with the defender, is he able to roll his hips through and create movement at the point of attack? That's where that lower body power. And then once he's able to create that movement, then here's the upper body power, right? Is he able to gain extension and get that pop and continue to create that movement? Because you'll see some guys, they'll get everything aligned well. They'll try to roll their hips through contact and they'll just get stuck like they're in mud, right? Like they can't drive through. Guys that have natural power, they can create that movement and they can maintain it. It doesn't just stop at the point of attack. They can roll it all the way through. So I think when you see that with Cooper a lot, you're going to see that he has powerful lower half. He's got powerful hips. He's able to drive through contact and really create movement at the point of attack. You're on mute, Brian.
Good initial punch, finishes well, which plays into the part one. And that's part of that power too, is I want to see a kid that can put his hands on and immediately kind of not rock you. Because once you can get a guy to kind of rock back a little bit, he now isn't moving forward as much. And that's kind of a way that you can win. Solid all-around athlete. No, not a great athlete, at least from what we've seen. Comes off, I think his athleticism plays even better in the run game because he's got really nice short area power or short area quickness. He comes off the ball with really good quickness. He can bend well. I mean, he's a big kid. He comes off with really good pad level for a kid who's 6'5", in my opinion. And, you know, good feet. And the thing I like, you know, kind of gets into the good ball skills and wide catch radius. Ball skills is not just can you catch the ball, right, when it's thrown to you. You know, ball skills, it includes a lot of things like, do you track the ball well? Do you snatch the ball? Do you wait on it? Do you win contested throws? And the wide catch radius has to do with, you know, like if you have short arms and tight hips, your catch radius is going to be kind of like this. If you have long arms and really loose hips, your catch radius is going to be like this. It's basically what's the area that the quarterback can throw the ball to you where you can go get it, right? And that's where you kind of get some of the bigger guys have a wider catch radius, or there's a guy like a Devontae Smith who's a smaller guy. He's got really long arms and an insane leaping ability. So his catch radius is going to be a lot bigger than your typical 6'1", 160-pound wide receiver, right?
Yeah.
So you have to evaluate those things. And like, there's a play that we'll see on his highlight tape where, I mean, he's running like just a quick option route, and the quarterback throws it like, it looks like almost a foot and a half behind him. And you know what play I'm talking about too. And he quickly flips his hips back and makes the catch. I'm like, okay, that's a 240-pound kid that can flip his hips and catch a tough ball. The quarterback's going to love that. Right. Because he does have pretty good arm length. Right. So I think just the physical catch radius is there, but he plays the ball well. And that's the ball skills we talk about, because if you don't see that quickly and if you can't react quickly to that, I don't care how loose your hips are, you're not making that catch. You got to see it, recognize it, and go get it. And he's got really fast hands too, Ryan. That's the thing I like too, is his hand speed is impressive when he's going to snatch the football out of the air. And that factors into it as well.
Yeah, no, I think he's a consistent, confident catcher of the football. And I would say, again, we always talk about range with safeties. Like, that's the only thing people talk about. But there's also range as a pass catcher. And that kind of goes with your, the catch radius thing, right? A guy that has those long limbs and those long arms and those strong hands has the ability to get to more falls naturally in the air or just as a runner, right? So he's got that frame where I would say that he has range as a pass catcher and he's got confident ball skills, which again, why does that matter? Especially in the red zone. Like, that matters so much because you're going to give your quarterback a consistent target, and especially a guy that blocks this well. I mean, play action game is going to be something that I think that is going to kind of fit into his wheelhouse early while he continues to develop his route running. Because again, he's not asked to do a ton with De La Salle as far as a route runner is concerned.
And for people that were asking, Notre Dame did beat Louisville 63-57. That game is over. So awesome. Notre Dame continues dominating ACC play. I think they were 3-4 at one point in time to start the season. They're now 16-7. So have gotten a lot better. And another huge game from Paul Atkinson. That to me is the biggest thing. We'll get right back to football because I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on basketball. They're finally getting Paul Atkinson involved in the offense, which I think is not a surprise with how well they've been playing. So anyway, we'll get back to football because this is a football channel. But the reason we're talking about that, there's a lot of people, what's the score and people watching the game. So I just want to update that so we can get back to football. All right. So I'm kidding, obviously. I think we don't see him just stretch the field a lot. Right. What was the joke you said to me before we started? Like, you ready to watch a bunch of pop passes or something like that, right? Like,
everything's off a plate.
Right.
It's like watching the Navy offense, right? Where they just lull you to sleep and then someone just hits a vertical. Like, that's just all it is, man. Like, they're just off of the
verticals that they run are hit fast. It's not like working the deep seams. And so, right now he's a quality route runner on the short to intermediate game. He understands. There's work needed, as there is for almost every high school junior, but he has a good understanding of what to do, which for me as a position coach, if I'm Jared Parker, I look at this kid and I say, okay, this kid's got a lot of potential to quickly pick up the things that I'm going to teach him because he has a natural understanding, he tries to sink his hips and top ends at times, which is, again, a kid that understands it's not about being choppy. It's about sinking your hips and doing those kind of things. He gets out of routes well. And the thing is, he plays against a lot of zone. He really has a good understanding of how to find those sweet spots in the zone. And I think that's
very, very important. Very important. Yeah.
Right. And so again, good football player. He's another guy that you're like, he's a tough evaluation because of the system he plays in. You love the physical tools, but it's like, okay, now let me see him beat somebody on a corner route, please. Now let me see if he can stretch the field. He may be able to do those things. We just don't know.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what you want to see from him. So again, this kid can play. Now the film that we have of him, it's going to be a little bit different. He has a bunch of individual game highlights, not a full season highlight. So we'll kind of be stopping and going through some of those. But the one thing you say about this kid, Ryan, he is going to be battle tested when he shows up at Notre Dame because De La Salle does not play an easy schedule.
He's going to be battle tested. He's going to be on the national stage, and he's going to be well coached. Those things are for certain.
And he's going to be tough because you don't play at De La Salle if you're not a tough kid. And we've learned that with the most recent De La Salle kid, Isaiah Foskey, who has anybody ever felt that Isaiah Foskey was uncomfortable on a big stage? No, he's not.
No.
Playing from De La Salle does not. It's definitely part of that. So see here. He's the tight end, I believe, to the left. Yep, there we go. You can see the decent arm length, like not super long arms, but good arm length there. You can see the big kid. You can see the flat back. Look how this is what I love. He keeps his back flat and he comes out and gets up underneath that kid and just drives it back. Two things I love about this, Ryan. Number one, his pad level is good and he drives his feet through contact. Those are the two things I love about it. The thing I don't like about it is you got to stay low, but then he goes low and then kind of goes forward as opposed to going low and then ripping up. And that's why that guy's kind of able to chuck him a little bit on this particular play.
Yeah.
He gets a little bit too much of a forward lean there.
Yep. Yeah, a little bit. So his chest goes a little too far over his toes. So he's a little bit off balance once 45 redirects there, right? So that's easily correctable, though. The things that you love, though, is that the explosion off the snap is fantastic. You see that he's coming out with low pads, and you can see the effort there to get inside positioning early. Like, that is not a typical thing. And I love that the first highlight on a tight end's highlight tape is a block instead of a catch. Like, that
I think awesome. Like the first 5 of his highlight tape are blocks. So the other thing I like too is even though his technique isn't great at like his technique to off the snap is excellent. Once engaged, his technique's not great, but you can see he's a strong kid because he stays on the block. You know, he doesn't lose it. I think also you'll see he has a tendency to kind of narrow that base when the more he works into a play. You'll see that several times in these clips. So he's gonna have to work to keep that base, and that's something that Jared Parker and Harry Heastan are going to have a role in helping him work out when he gets to the next level. But the tools are there. You know, that's the thing you like. The tools are there. There he is in a wing. Look, this is for people that love tight end play. You got to love this, right? I think, is this the same play just from a tight angle? I think it might be. Yeah, this is the same play from the tight angle. Now here you can see the base getting a little bit narrow, right? So when he starts chopping his feet, look how close his feet get. Right? Look at that.
Right there.
You don't want to see that. You want to keep that base wide, and those are the things that he's gonna have to work on. So the lean and then the narrow base. And Ryan, as you said, a good line coach, a good tight ends coach is fixing that as a freshman. Yeah. Right. If he's an early enrollee, that's getting fixed by the time he gets to fall camp of his freshman year.
Yeah, no, it's easily correctable. The things that you want to see, though, is the pad level and the effort as a blocker, right? Like, that's what you want to see. And I joked about, all 22 for high school. Apparently we have it here. So
I know, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Or maybe it'd be like all 14 because I don't see a lot of DBs in this one.
That's a good point. Good point.
But I love the get off here real quick off the ball. Again, pad level stays low. And look, that is not a natural thing for a kid that's 250, 6'5". It's really not. And he does a little bit of a forearm shiver here as opposed to really shooting his hands. Again, something can be worked on, but he stays engaged. Look at that finish.
Yep.
And the thing I like about this too, once he finishes right here, he's got 2 options. At that moment, he's got 2 options. 1, stand over the guy and taunt him that I just destroyed you, or B, go look for work.
Yeah.
Look what he does. Okay, let me go look for work. You know what I mean? Let me see. Where's the ball? Let me go find the ball. Okay, ball's down there. We're good to go. But that's something I like. And you'll see that from him quite a bit, right? A little premature with the touchdown celebration. But, I love the get off from this kid. This kid gets off the ball with some he has a purpose when that ball is snapped, right? We talk about a sense of urgency. Right, with receivers, when this kid's in the run game, he has a sense of urgency. You can see the narrow base here again.
Yeah, his knees are almost together at one point,
right?
And his feet are almost crossing there.
Yeah, and that's not where you want to be. So that's something he's gonna have to work on, that narrow base, because that is a bad habit for 6'5" guys. Like that's one of those early things that guys his size have to break. But I love the energy, excited about. I mean, this is a kid who enjoys blocking people.
Absolutely.
Hands get a little wide here. You can see it, right? It's going to be a hold in college, most likely. That's you got to shoot those hands. But I like the get off. And you can see him working his feet through contact, right? That's the thing is he's working his feet. Now, I got to prove the base. I've got some, work on his hand placement and things like that. But it's a lot easier to teach a kid to put his hands in the right place and work on his base than it is to teach a kid to work his feet through contact. Some kids just don't pick it up. I mean, we saw that at Notre Dame this year. They were 5th and 6th year offensive linemen that would just hit and stop their feet. Yep. Right? This is a kid who's a junior in high school who already understands how important it is to work your feet through contact.
Yep.
And it has to be drilled because it's not that is not a natural thing for your body. Well, usually when you hit a brick wall, you don't think keep going. Right. You think stop, right? And you like to your point earlier, Ryan, this is a kid that he's been coached well. For a high school junior, this is good technique.
Oh no, absolutely. And I was just going to say, like, his lower body is obviously very strong because you can see on contact, like his feet don't stall. Usually it stalls because there's just an absence of power there, right? But he has that lower body and that hip power to explode on contact, which is where those quick feet come and the pitter patter and continuous effort.
It's a little bit better base here, Ryan. It gets a little bit low there, right? A little bit narrow there, but once he starts to work, they widen a bit out a bit. You can see it there as he turns. He widens that base on the turn. I want to see him do right there. You can see it. I want to see him do that at the snap. Right. I think those are things like there's going to be times when your base is going to narrow. If you're working an outside zone against a wide 9 technique, your feet are going to get narrow because you've got to get width. But when you're blocking in space like that, this is the play I think we were talking about earlier. Yeah. This is not an easy catch. This ball's thrown well behind. And look at him settling into that zone.
Yep.
Right. You can see he's looking inside, and who's he worried about? The linebackers to the backside safety. The linebackers come, so he knows that, and he sees that backside safety sitting down, robbing down. So he just kind of finds that sweet spot, gets his hips around, he makes that catch look easy.
Yeah. And if you don't have zone awareness, you're going to go through that zone way too quick. You're not going to give your quarterback a good target. You're going to run into contact. And then, you see that catch radius, right? Coming back and the body control to obviously finish it there too.
Yeah. And he doesn't get a chance to do a lot of that, a lot of catching the ball. I mean, for his high school, he caught it more than anybody else did, but he doesn't get to do it, as far as when you've seen like Michael Mayer was 1,000-yard receiver as a junior and senior. You know what I mean? Like,
for context that people don't understand how little they throw the ball. I'm pretty sure he led and I don't have the stats in front of me, but I think it was like 20 something catches for like 300 something yards. Yes. Like it was nothing. Yeah.
No, it was not something impressive. Impressive. Now this is against Folsom High School. I'm going to pull this up here. Folsom High School, obviously, if you read Irish Breakdown, it's because this is where Rico Flores gets to go. So I believe that's Rico up here, correct? Because Rico has kind of long hair.
Looks like it, yeah.
So this is Cooper playing defense. You can see the arm length there. You can see also this is a great look here because you can see how skinny he kind of still is. Oh, goodness gracious. He's still not skinny. He's thin. Yeah, he's going to fill out. I mean, this kid could be 265 when it's all said and done, Ryan.
Oh, easy.
Big-bodied kid. Love this burst.
I think, you talked a little bit about, I think at one point, Brian, like Brock Wright, maybe stylistically a little similar, right? Like, I think he has that type of frame, right? Like, I think he can hold 260 relatively easy.
Yeah, and he's longer than Brock was. Yeah. At least taller. I'll tell you what, if he doesn't rise up the depth chart at Notre Dame at tight end, you better believe that the defensive line coach is going to be over there trying to say, hey, you know what? We might be able to use him. This is a pretty short kid that he's going against right here. Like this kid is almost like this kid is not big. This kid's chest is almost to where his head is before he's out of his stance. So being able to get low against this kid is not easy, but you can see he understands that it's not easy, and he's trying to fight to get back low.
Right.
Like you can tell with this kid, Ryan, that the whole stay low thing has been pounded into his head at De La Salle.
He's gone through the chute a few times in his De La Salle career.
Which is one of the nice things, you don't ever have to worry about an offensive lineman, an option blocker not understanding the need to stay low. There's no offense that preaches come out low more than the triple option.
Yep.
Not a one.
And to put into context what he's doing, we talked about De La Salle. Everybody knows the kind of the lineage of De La Salle. He's also, and I know Foskey did it as well when he was there, right? He's playing both sides of the ball on a national power. So just put that into perspective, how impressive this is for junior in high school to be able to play both off tight end and defensive end.
And Foskey was originally recruited to be a tight end by most people. It was Notre Dame that convinced him to play defense. And good Lord, what a smart decision that was.
Absolutely. A little
You
bit
can
of
see the length.
slipperiness up here. Yeah. The
Yeah.
get off's not good, but like look at that
Right.
slipperiness right there to get off that block.
Uses his hands really effectively here. Here's in the run game again. Come on, Q. Everybody get down, get set.
Into second level.
Again, you can see his hands are way outside here. Like that's a hold. I mean, in college, that's a holding penalty. Let me rephrase that. It's a hold against Notre Dame. I don't know if they would call that on teams that Notre Dame plays, but you cannot be wrapping your hand around the back of a guy.
Yeah, agreed.
Right? And that's something he's going to have to work on. But again, I love the compete here. Yep. That's the thing.
You see the pop there too. Whenever a defender's head pops back like this a little bit, like there was a nice little force behind that one.
Works his feet through contact, getting up to the second level,
and he understands
off the ball.
And it's good spatial awareness, right? Like he understands where he needs to be, like from a leverage perspective, to leverage that kid outside, because we know that it's an inside run, so you need to kind of hit him and then turn him out there. Here's the tight end.
This is one of the very few times you're going to see him running beyond 12 yards in high school. And again, it's like, okay, is he not that fast, or is he just kind of thinking like he turns around like he thinks the ball's already about to come? Like that's what I see. I see a kid when I talk about accelerating through the look back. This is an exact example. Look how he slows down when he turns back to the ball. Watch this. It's like, oh, slow down. And then he tracks it pretty well, though.
Nice catch, yeah.
Like he's thinking this is going to be a line drive. You can just his whole body language, the way he's looking back to the quarterback, he's expecting this thing to be put right on him. Quarterback puts it over the top, and he plays it pretty well and lumbers his way into the end zone.
It's not an easy catch, though. That's not an easy catch. Has to reach back, like almost behind his head. Like it's not easy.
And I'm thinking he's about to get hawked here, and he ends up pulling away for the big play. So that's a quality rep there by Mr. Flanagan. Get to one more game film. There was another really good one here. Let me see which one that is. Let me see which one do I want to do. All right, I like this one here. We'll go with this. So we're going to watch one more bit of game film, and then we are going to wrap it up here with Cooper Flanagan. Only 2 tonight since we're now wrapped up the offensive classes. Coach Reese and the staff, but they got to get going, Ryan. Like we had two whole shows with 3 kids each, and then we're doing like one show with 2 guys for the offense. Got to get it going.
Yeah.
A lot of it's the same stuff, just coming off with, working hard, driving his feet, being physical.
Explosive.
Yeah. I love the compete. I mean, he's a tough kid, good athlete. And this is what I was talking about before, Ryan. Like you see it a little bit, like he looks so much quicker off the ball when he's blocking than he does as a route runner, right? You see what I'm saying? Like a little bit lumbering, not really getting up real fast, but I love this is the ball skills right here, right? Like he actually is a little late looking back for the ball. The quarterback puts it right on him, and he brings it, he hauls it in. This is not an easy catch. Now he needs to look for the ball a little quicker, right? Like right now, you got to be kind of thinking the ball's coming, and the quarterback should not have thrown the ball there. I mean, he really should. If we're being honest, that ball has no business going to him. But quarterback has some guts, puts a little bit of zip on it, and he makes a great catch.
He does. He does. You talked about balls. You talked about ball skills too, right? Like this is good hand-eye coordination. This is good, just the ability to kind of understand how to contort his body. Like this is this is a skill here, right? This is the skill of catching.
Like I said, I want to see him pick up the urgency off the line. That's the one thing from the few routes we've seen, even the little zone one. Like I want to see you settle up, but I want to see you get there quickly. He doesn't really come off the line with great urgency. Now this one he does, because why? It's a fake. It's a trick play.
Yeah.
And then I got to go. And so now you see him run a little bit more, right? You see a little bit more burst there, right? So that's what I say is he's got it in him. He just has to, that's just not a big part of his game.
Be consistent with it.
Yeah, it's a part. So like, that's why I say, if you see him do it a couple times, he's got it in him. He's just got to learn. Like this, I love this get off. Like this is quick off the ball. That's what I talk about. Off the ball, he's quick. Decent route. Like he doesn't bend this nearly. Like I see, 5'11" wide receivers that get more bend and I don't want a lot of bend here, by the way. I don't want a guy making a cut at 8 and then rounding it off to 12, right? You want to go 8 to 10 back to 9 is basically kind of what you want to do. He does a nice job of limiting how much of a bend there is and then leveling off quickly. Because what tends to happen with a lot of even receivers is when they bend, they just kind of keep drifting, right? They just, and this happened to me. I had a receiver when we were playing Robert Morris, and he just kept drifting upfield and allowed the corner to undercut him, pick it off, and run it back for a touchdown, right? And so you got to get on him. This is a really nice job here of leveling off once he gets out of his bend, and which prevents, it makes the proper distance. The quarterback knows where the ball is going to go, but also it prevents anyone from kind of undercutting him from distance. So it's a really nice, really efficient feet. This is called a speed cut, right? Like, so his feet get a little bit wide at the top of it, but be able to plant like that and then rip out is that to me shows me good agility. And it shows me a guy that understands that, hey, I know how to do this, right? And but then he's got the athleticism to do it. This is a really quality speed cut for a kid who's 6'5" and 240 pounds.
Yep. Good hands catcher. You can see it on every catch so far. Another little pop.
And this is why he doesn't often come off. You want to know why he doesn't come off with a sense of urgency? It's because this is what a lot of his catches are off of.
Yep.
He can't come off with urgency because he's going to get that ball real quickly. Look how smooth he is. Like, and I don't know why he slows down so much right here. It's almost like the things on super slow-mo. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. But I love how smooth he is, just kind of turning his hips, making the catch, and then turning into the spin. It's a good football play right there. Go ahead.
He kind of reminds me a little bit of, you remember Dalton Schultz that used to play with Stanford a little bit? Like, I get that kind of vibe with him.
Notre Dame tried to recruit him out of high school. Yeah, real smooth athlete. Now, he's going to need to, when he turns here, this ball's got to get tighter to his body. Like right there, that ball's still out there. Every DB in college is all 4 of those dudes, right? Like all 3 of these dudes, and then this dude late are going to be taught reach for the ball, rip for the ball. You know what I mean? So that's something I'm working on too. But all little things, like all coachable things, all things you can improve upon, and that's what I like about Cooper. There's some tools to work with there.
Absolutely.
So that is Cooper Flanagan, Notre Dame tight end commit. We never actually did. So when he committed, I can't even remember. There's like a million things going on, and we never did a video on him. So this is the first time we've actually really broken down his game on the Irish Breakdown podcast. So
nice.
Good player to have. I believe Notre Dame has done it tight end in this class. At least they were when John McNulty was here. I don't know. I don't think that George Takis leaving changes that, because I don't think there was an anticipation that George was going to come back. So I would assume that they're done in this class, although I still wish they'd recruit Deuce Robinson to go with him. So, I'd rather take Deuce as a second tight end than a 4th receiver. That because the way you can use Deuce, that's just me. But I don't know if that's what Notre Dame is going to do at this point in time.
Yep. Yeah. And I saw that question in the chat at one point, so I definitely wanted to get to that as well. Yep. I imagine as long as Cooper's solid, I think that Cooper Flanagan is the lone take in the tight end room, I would guess, in the cycle.
And then you did interview him recently, I think a week ago, and you talked about that, because the Bama offer, he's talked about maybe taking some visits, but what was your impression from talking to him about just how firm is he in the class?
Well, he made it known to me, because I talked to him after Coach McNulty left, obviously, right? And every time there's a coaching change, there's going to be some uneasiness, which there was. He was flat out and you can go look at the piece if you want to, an Irish Breakdown. Like, he was very forthcoming that it was a shock to him, but Coach McNulty obviously left them in a good way. Him and his family had called them and just let them know, like, this is happening. I just want you all to be on the forefront of it. All of the coaches, Coach Reese, Coach Freeman, they reached out very quickly after that to let him know, like, hey, you're still our guy. Even if there's going to be another new tight end coach in here, you're the tight end in this class. And from there, I think that really did resonate with him. I think that he really did take to that very well. And I think that he is solid after obviously a tough situation. He spoke very highly of kind of being made as a priority by the other coaches. Like they wanted to make sure that he knew that he was the priority at the tight end position in the class, regardless.
Obviously, it's great that Freeman and Reese reached out so quickly.
Yeah.
I must admit the thing that surprised me and made me kind of up my respect for John McNulty is what he said about what McNulty told him going out the door. I mean, it's like McNulty could have easily been like, hey, I'm going to BC and, we'd love to have you kind of thing. And I'm sure that he'll still talk to him, but he made sure he reassured, like, everything I said about Notre Dame is still true, and I thought that was classy. He called the kid, let the kid know, hey, just want to let you know what's going on. And, we see what in the college coaching profession, just guys that are just up and leave their team. And like, they find out on social media or however else. For John McNulty to proactively let the kid know, hey, this is what's going on. Right. I respected that. I really did. And then to reinforce, there's a reason that you picked Notre Dame, right? Yep. So I really like that. But good player, two good solid pickups, right? Like two good. If these are the two lowest ranked or least talented or least whatever projectable kids in this recruiting class, they're going to be pretty flipping good, right? I mean, it's going to be one heck of a class because these are two good football players, right?
Yeah, and I would say the one thing too is that if tight end and running back are the lowest ranked, like let's just say in the offensive, let's say in the offensive class, that might be two of the lower ranked ones. In my opinion, coming into the cycle, running back and tight end were two of the lower priority classes just in general. We're talking about the lack of numbers, obviously at tight end specifically. Like you didn't have to pull in this star-studded deep class, right? Like you got a top 250 tight end, though. You got that type of players. I mean, what was it? 247 Sports had him as the number 99 player. So,
and there's some tools to work with. And the other thing, too, that's important, and we didn't talk about this during the film session because the film session was just about Cooper. But if you're going to talk about it from a recruiting standpoint, Eli Raridan to me is sort of a hybrid tight end. He can play attached, but he's a W, he's a slot, he's a flex, he can do a lot of things. Holden Stace is an attached tight end that can also play in the wing. He can play flex. He can do some stuff at W. They kind of complement each other really well. The thing about Cooper is the traditional throwback tight end of that group, which again leads to the notion that these three complement each other really well. And they all can do the same things, but they do them at a different level. Like, Cooper can run a seam route, but he doesn't run it as well as Holden Stace and Eli Raridan. Raridan and Holden Stace are both good blockers, but they're not what Cooper Flanagan is as a blocker, right? I mean, and I think that's the thing is, this kid brings traits that I believe are really complementary skills to where Holden and Eli are legitimate threats to beat you down the field. Well, this is a kid that's going to be I hate guarding this guy on 3rd and 5. I hate guarding him on 3rd and 5 because he just knows how to get open and catch the ball. I mean, you can maybe, he may run an option cut and that 6'2" linebacker has him played perfectly, but the quarterback knows if I put that ball at about 8 feet, right? I know that 6'2" linebacker ain't getting to it, but I know that my 6'6" or 6'5" long-armed, loose hipped, great ball skills tight end is going to go get it, right? And that's when we talk about like why do ball skills matter? That's exactly why. Because on 3rd and 5, the quarterback knows if I put this sucker up about 8-9 feet in the air, he's going to have a chance to go get it. And quarterbacks, like you'll see quarterbacks do that, and people on Twitter are like, "Oh, that was a terrible throw." And like, no, that's exactly where he wanted to put that ball. I mean, it's like if he puts that ball right here, that sucker's getting picked off. Sure. He put that ball at 8-9 feet, knowing that his guy's either going to catch it or it's going to sail and go out of bounds. Well, and that's what he brings to the table.
And to fit, right? Like we were just talking with, let's just keep using Eli Raridan and Holden Stays with Cooper Flanagan for a second. You can get all three of those guys on the field at the same time, right? Cooper Flanagan's attached. Holden Stays is in as a wing H-back type. And then we got Eli Raridan in the slot. Like that is a possibility, right? Like all those guys, I think, do mesh really well together.
Well, and you go 13 personnel. Here's another example of how you do it, right? So let's say Notre Dame gets Carnell Tate, or you look at Tobias Merriweather, or whatever the case may be. You come out in 13 personnel, one play, and you do your running stuff, 2 tight ends, wing. And the next play, you've got Tobias out wide. You've got Cooper Flanagan attached. You've got Holden Stace in a wing where he's motioning around. And oh, by the way, we just put our 6'7" other tight end, Eli Raridan, backside as the W. right?
Yep.
Like that adds different value to what you can do. And as a red zone threat, I'm like, good luck covering that in the red zone, right? I mean, you've got 6'4" Tobias, right? So that's the thing you like is they just bring a whole lot to the table. And they, like you said, I'm a big believer in this is why I find some faults with the way that recruiting rankings, are established when it comes to class rankings, because just the pure point system doesn't tell you, did they meet their needs? Did they find complementary players, or did they get 3 guys at receiver that do the exact same thing? Right. And that's the thing about it is like, well, they didn't have a tight end that can block, and they signed 2 great tight ends, but they're both 210-pound pass catchers. They still don't have a bit of block, and they have an offense that requires a second tight end that can block. Well, did you really meet your need and make your team better?
Sure.
And I think those are the things you have to look at besides just who did you land and what points did they give, is how did you build your team? And that's what I like about Cooper Flanagan. Like I said, I would like to see them take a second tight end, just because I don't care how many tight ends you got on your roster. If Deuce Robinson's interested, you keep recruiting him. I don't know if he's still interested. I would at least make the phone call if I was Jared Parker.
Sure.
But if all they get is Cooper Flanagan, okay, cool. I mean, it's a good football player, right? And same thing with Cedric Irvin. But the other part too is both of those positions are dependent upon, if you have a good player at those positions and you're really good around them, they're going to be even better players.
For sure.
With the way that they've recruited offensive line in recent years, and I think they're going to recruit in 2023, a decisive, one-cut, smart runner like Sedrick Irvin is going to put up a lot of numbers behind that line. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the thing you have to think about too. So 2 good players, 2 good pickups on offense, but obviously the offensive staff is going to somewhat have to kind of get going here over the next couple weeks. So that's going to do it for today's show. Ryan, next week, we're actually going to have several recruiting shows next week. We're going to do a 2-part series where we're going to break down, we're going to kind of go position by position and just kind of look at the current roster, talk about the needs at each position and the numbers needs, and then just kind of go over just some early names to know. And then our Wednesday night show, we're going to start I'm going to start releasing on the website, kind of releasing my big boards coming up here soon, which is just kind of breaking down and film of the players that Notre Dame's recruiting at certain positions. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do some of these shows, and we're going to basically take 3-4 guys at a time from the boards and break down the film. So like, if there's 12 receivers on the board, we'll probably do 3 shows breaking down the receivers, that kind of thing. And really start diving into the film of the kids on the board for Notre Dame. So not the committed players, but the guys are still recruiting. So that's where we're going to take this Wednesday night show moving forward. We will start with quarterback next week. And most of the show is going to be about Dante Moore. So I'll be honest with you, but we will look at some other players on the board, right? We'll take a look at Jackson Arnold. We'll look at some of the kids that they're still kind of looking at, but it's going to mostly be about looking at Dante Moore. And then we'll kind of mix it up, offense, defense, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So this is going to take us for, down the road for this Wednesday night show, and we may pull some surprise, like, hey, on a Tuesday night, Ryan and I feel like talking, going over some film, and there's a lot of kids on the board, so we may just, hey, let's do a show tonight, which is why, Ryan, it makes sense to not only hit the like and subscribe buttons, to make sure you hit that notification bell. So if we just decide on a Thursday night or a Tuesday night or a Friday night or a Saturday night that, you know what, Ryan and I like talking ball, because what y'all don't know is after he and I talked for an hour, or Vince and I talked for like an hour and a half during the show today, I called Ryan to tell him, hey, I have one idea for an article, and it turned into an hour and a half conversation of just talking ball, right? So
salary cap and offensive line play.
Yeah. If Quentin Nelson, the premise, one of the things was, if Quentin Nelson gets the big contract this offseason that we think he's going to get, then 3 of the 8 highest paid offensive linemen in the NFL will be Harry Hiestand players. Harry Hiestand recruits from Notre Dame. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So yeah, we had one of our draft and all that kind of stuff. So we're like, we should be doing this for shows, man. So let's get this going. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. So yes, hit that right there. That's that like button. Hit that. And there's that subscribe one. Do that one. And then Ryan, it's off the screen for me, man. I need your help. Yes. Hit the notification bell and share it, because that helps us. That helps the algorithm, the old YouTube algorithm, of helping us get in front of more people. So you share it, you do all those things, and it helps us out. So we will be back again soon. We'll have a show tomorrow. Vince and I will be back tomorrow at 12:30 Friday We'll have our Friday at noon. Ryan and I will be there to cover the announcement of Preston Zinter, who has made his decision. He's going to announce that on Friday. We will discuss his decision. If he picks Notre Dame, we'll talk about what that means for Notre Dame. If he doesn't pick Notre Dame, we will discuss what that means for Notre Dame. And then after that, we will have our mailbag. So we'll kind of combine those couple things together. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you join us. So for Ryan Roberts, I'm Brian Driscoll. Thank you all so much for being with us on the Irish Breakdown podcast.